2 million years ago, the world was wild, cruel, and dangerous. On the rocky highlands of Africa, survival was a test every day. There were no houses, no farms, no weapons of iron. Only sharp stones, wooden spears, and fire that was never easy to keep. The people of this age, the early humans called Homo Habilis, lived in small tribes. They were not the strongest beasts on the land. Lions, saber-toothed cats, and giant hyenas were stronger. Mountain goats were faster and more sure-footed. Yet the humans had one thing the beast did not: the mind to plan, the courage to risk, and the will to survive. The sun rose that morning with a red glow, spreading light across the cliffs. The tribe stirred awake. Their fire was small, only glowing coals in the ash. Smoke drifted weakly into the cool air. Hunger pressed on them. Children whined. Mothers looked down at their thin arms, and the old ones sat silent with empty eyes. They had not eaten for 2 days. The leader of the tribe, a man with scars on his arms and hair tangled by the wind, looked toward the cliffs. High above, moving like shadows on narrow ledges, the mountain goats climbed. Their horns caught the light, their bodies sure on the rocks. To the humans, they were life itself. One goat meant meat, marrow, and skin for clothes. But to hunt them was nearly impossible. The cliffs were steep, the goats too quick. Still, hunger left no choice. The leader gathered his hunters, 5 men and 2 women strong enough to risk the climb. He pointed with a wooden spear at the goats above. His voice was low, but his meaning clear. They would set a trap. The plan was simple but deadly. Some hunters would climb above the path of the goats carrying heavy rocks. Others would wait below with sharp stone spears. If the goats were forced to move, one might stumble, fall, or run into the trap. It was dangerous, but it was their only hope. The hunters prepared. Their bodies were thin, but their eyes sharp. Each tied rough leather around their feet for grip. Each carried a weapon shaped from stone and wood. Women back at camp lit more fire, ready to cook if the hunters returned with prey. But their faces showed fear, because not all hunters returned from such climbs. The group moved toward the cliffs. The path was hard, the rocks sharp. Dust rose with each step. From above, the goats watched with calm eyes, as if knowing they had the advantage. The hunters climbed higher, pressing their hands to the rock, gripping cracks, pulling themselves up with strength born from desperation. Halfway up, one hunter slipped. Stones clattered down, echoing across the valley. The mountain goats raised their heads, ears twitching. For a long moment, silence ruled. The hunters froze, hearts pounding. If the goats bolted too soon, the plan would fail. The leader gestured with his hand, slow, steady, climb again. They moved on. Sweat ran down their faces, their breaths hard. Finally, they reached their place above the ledge. Below, the goats grazed, chewing dry grass that clung to the cliffside. The hunters above lifted the first rocks, heavy and rough. Their muscles shook, but they held on. Below, the other hunters crouched with spears, eyes fixed on the goats. The signal came. A sharp cry from the leader. The rocks were pushed. They tumbled, crashing against the cliff, bouncing with thunder. The goats leaped, startled, their hooves striking stone. Dust filled the air. The animals ran, hooves clattering like drums. The hunters shouted, waving arms, driving them toward the trap. One goat turned sharply, horns swinging. Another leaped across a gap, sure-footed and quick. But only one stumbled. The ground broke beneath its hooves, and it fell to the lower ledge. Spears flew. One missed. Another struck the rock. The last hit flesh. The goat cried, rearing up, blood staining its side. But it was not yet beaten. It lowered its horns, charging at the hunters. On that narrow cliff, man and beast faced each other. The goat's eyes were wild, its horns sharp. The hunter with the spear braced himself. Fear gripped him, but hunger drove him forward. He lunged, the goat struck. The spear pierced deeper. The hunter fell back. The goat collapsed, its body twitching, then still. The valley echoed with silence. Dust drifted down. The hunters breathed hard, their bodies shaking. The leader raised his spear and shouted, a cry of victory that carried across the cliffs. But victory was never free. One hunter's arm was cut open, blood running down his skin. Another had bruises from the rocks. They had food, but they had paid with pain. Survival was never without cost. Together they lifted the goat. Its body was heavy, but the thought of meat gave them strength. Step by step they carried it down the cliffs. The women and children at camp saw them coming and ran to meet them. Cries of joy filled the air. At the fire, stone knives were lifted. The leader cut the first slice, giving it to the youngest child. The tribe cheered. Meat roasted on the fire, fat dripping into the flames, sending sparks high. The smell filled the air, rich and warm. Children laughed, their mouths full. Women sang, their voices low and sweet. Men told the story of the hunt, their hands moving in wide gestures showing how the rocks fell and the goat stumbled. Around the fire life returned, but the leader sat in silence for a while. His eyes watched the cliffs in the distance, dark under the night sky. He knew this victory was small. Tomorrow hunger would return. Tomorrow another beast would need to fall. But tonight they had food, they had fire, and they had hope. The stars shone above, bright and endless. The tribe looked up, their faces glowing in the firelight. They did not know they were writing history. They did not know that one day, their children's children would conquer the earth. All they knew was that on this night they had faced the deadly cliffs, outwitted the mountain goat, and won the feast of survival. The fire crackled, the meat sizzled, and the tribe celebrated. On the high cliffs, the shadows of the goats moved again, watching, waiting. The struggle between man and beast was far from over. But for this night, man had won.